Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. I should have trusted my gut the moment she insisted I come to dinner. It'll be fun, she said. Just some drinks with the girls and their husbands. Nothing serious. I hadn't even wanted to go. I'd worked a 10-hour day. My head was pounding, and the thought of sitting at a long table while they swapped gossip sounded like torture. But she smiled at me with that carefully curated charm, like I was a plus one she needed to make the group photo look balanced, and I gave in. Like I always did. The restaurant was trendy and loud, one of those places where everything costs too much and no one actually finishes their plate. We got seated at a long table near the back, one of those setups where half the group ends up basically talking only to whoever's seated beside them. She made sure I was on the far end. I told myself it was just the way things worked out. But part of me knew better. For the first hour, I just sat back and listened, smiling when appropriate, nodding along to conversations I wasn't part of. My wife, meanwhile, was holding court like a stand-up comic. She'd always had a loud laugh, the kind that drew attention whether she wanted it to or not. And tonight, she wanted it. There were 3 glasses of wine in when the conversation turned toward relationship honesty. You know the kind, half-joking, half-gut punch confessions about little things spouses do that drive each other crazy. One of the women mentioned her husband leaving the toilet seat up. Another talked about snoring. My wife sipped her wine, eyes dancing with anticipation. Then she said it. Well, since we're all being honest, she leaned forward like she was letting them in on some juicy secret. You know what the worst is? Being married to a small man with a small show. Laughter erupted. I froze. Some of them didn't even know what to say. A few giggled nervously. 1 or 2 of the wives glanced in my direction, probably trying to gauge if I'd heard. I heard every syllable. And the worst part wasn't even the words. It was the way she said them, like a punchline she'd rehearsed in her head. Like it had been waiting on her tongue for weeks. The kind of cruelty you don't deliver by accident. I didn't move. Didn't speak. I just sat there, tasting the metallic sharpness of humiliation in my throat, waiting for her to backpedal. To say it was a joke. To flash that grin and shake her head like she didn't mean it. She didn't. She just took another sip and kept going. Honestly, I could stand on a chair and still not see anything impressive, she added with a smirk. But hey, he tries. More laughter. That was when I knew this wasn't the first time she'd said it. This was the kind of line you only share publicly after it's already made the rounds in private. And suddenly I saw them all differently. Her friends, the way they looked at me, it wasn't pity. It wasn't confusion. It was recognition. They already knew. My face was burning, but I didn't let it show. I reached for my drink, water, because I wanted to keep my head clear, and calmly took a sip. I didn't storm out. I didn't call her out. I didn't break the glass in my hand, though a part of me really wanted to. No. I just sat back and waited for the night to end, like a good little punchline. She barely noticed. Barely looked at me. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. At one point, one of her friends, a quiet woman I barely knew, leaned over and softly whispered, "I'm sorry." I looked at her, confused, and she just added, "You didn't deserve that." And that's when something shifted in me. Something I didn't even fully understand yet. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was colder than that. Quieter. I stopped being embarrassed. I started observing. That night, when we got home, she flopped onto the bed without a word. She didn't even seem to remember what she'd said. Or maybe she did. Maybe she just didn't care. I lay beside her in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe like nothing had happened. But something had. I couldn't quite name it yet. But I knew it had just begun. She didn't bring it up the next morning. Not over coffee. Not while tossing her gym bag over her shoulder and heading out the door. Not when I kissed her on the cheek out of habit, though this time, she didn't lean in. She didn't have to mention the dinner. Because in her mind, it was nothing. Just some drunken fun. Teasing. Banter. It hadn't occurred to her that she'd said anything wrong. And maybe that's what hit me hardest. The casualness of it. It wasn't just what she said. It was the fact that she thought I'd just take it. Like I always did. But something had changed. I didn't quite have a plan yet, I wasn't there. But I'd stopped looking at her through the same lens. That morning, I watched her go through her usual routine. Hair pulled back, water bottle filled, keys in hand, and I didn't see my wife. I saw someone who had already left me a long time ago. That afternoon, while she was out, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at her phone on the nightstand. It was unlocked. I don't know if that made it better or worse, whether she was careless or just that confident I'd never look. My fingers hovered over the screen. I told myself not to do it, that I didn't want to be that guy, that maybe I was just hurt and fishing for more pain. But then I remembered her voice. Small man with a small show. And I picked it up. I didn't even have to dig. The proof was right there, bubbles of flirtation stacked in messy threads across her screen. Instagram DMs, WhatsApp, even her regular messages. No fake names, no code words. She didn't even bother hiding it. There was one name that appeared more than the rest, Brent. I remembered Brent. One of her friend's boyfriends, now ex-tall guy, personal trainer, cocky in the way guys get when they know women look twice. We'd met him once at a barbecue. He'd given me that look, that thin, invisible smirk some men give when they're trying not to laugh in your face. I hadn't liked him then. Now I understood why. I scrolled. Her, he's so clueless. Honestly, it's like living with a cousin at this point. Him, if I were your husband, you wouldn't be texting me at all. You'd be too busy walking funny. Her, LOL behave. But you're not wrong. And then, tried him last week. 2 minutes, if that. I've faked more than just the finish lately. That one made me pause. Not because it was the worst, but because I remembered that night. I'd lit candles, put on music, tried to close the distance she'd been putting between us for weeks. I thought maybe we were reconnecting, that maybe we still had something to fight for. And she'd left the room saying she was tired. Apparently, she was just disappointed. My hands were trembling, but I kept going. I needed the full picture. Another thread. Her friend Kayla. Girl that joke last night about the small show? Savage AF. Her. LOL, he didn't even react. See what I mean? Zero presence. It's like being married to a footstool. My stomach twisted. I'd been worried about finding out she was cheating. But this was worse. She wasn't just bored. She was entertained. I put the phone down. Not gently. I wanted it to shatter on the floor. I wanted her to walk in and catch me in the act and have to explain everything to my face. I wanted to yell, scream, grab her by the shoulders, and ask her what the hell I ever did to deserve this. But I didn't do any of that. Instead, I sat there, very still, staring at the wall. It was strange, the absence of rage. I didn't feel the urge to destroy anything. I didn't even feel like crying. It was a kind of emotional vertigo, like I was watching someone else's life unravel in slow motion. Later that evening, I stood in the kitchen when she got home. She kissed me on the cheek again, like always, and muttered, "Long day. I'm gonna shower." I nodded. She didn't notice anything was different. Didn't notice the hollow quiet behind my eyes. But that night, while she slept, I pulled out an old notebook from the drawer. Not for journaling. For planning. If she wanted to laugh at me in group chats and behind her wine glass, fine. But I wasn't going to be the man she laughed at forever. I was done reacting. It was time to respond. There's a strange kind of strength in silence. After that night, I stopped waiting for things to get better. I stopped waiting for her to notice the way I looked at her differently, the way I barely touched my dinner, the way I no longer leaned in when we sat on the same couch. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did, and didn't care. She was on her phone more, laughing at things she wouldn't explain, mentioning work getaways that came out of nowhere. A girls' retreat was coming up next month. She was so casual when she told me, like she was letting me know she'd be getting a haircut. I nodded, said it sounded like a good idea. What I didn't say was that it would be the last time she'd ever come home to me. While she planned her trip, I planned mine. My first move was subtle. I stopped depositing my full paycheck into our joint account. I diverted most of it to a private account I opened in a neighboring city, one she had no connection to. She didn't notice, because she hadn't checked the account in weeks. She assumed the bills were still getting paid, and they were. But not for long. The second thing I did was sort through the digital wreckage of our marriage. Screenshots, logs, backups. I pulled every text she had with Brent, every mocking message with her friends. I created a folder, labeled discreetly as trip photos, and stored it on a flash drive I kept in the glove compartment of my car. Not because I planned to use it legally. I just wanted to remember what betrayal actually looked like, in case I ever forgot. Then I started going to the gym. I know how cliché that sounds, but I wasn't doing it to get revenge. Not entirely. I just needed something, anything, to pull me out of the fog. Something that wasn't tied to her, or what she'd done to me. So every day after work, I'd spend an hour there. Headphones in, tunnel vision on. And slowly, things started to shift. The bags under my eyes faded. My posture changed. I started sleeping through the night again. Not because I was okay, but because I was finally in motion. And motion has a way of healing what silence never could. Meanwhile, I observed her. Carefully, like a biologist watching a dying species. She was so sure of herself. So confident in her lies. Her laughter got louder around the house. Her phone buzzed later into the night. Sometimes I'd wake up to the soft glow of her screen and the quiet tapping of her thumbs, and she wouldn't even flinch. She believed she was untouchable, and maybe she was. Until the day she packed her overnight bag for the girls' trip. She stood in the mirror, adjusting her hair, trying on different earrings. She asked me if she looked good in that dress, the deep burgundy one she usually saved for rare dinners out. "You look great," I said calmly. She smiled, smug and distracted. "We'll probably just drink wine and sit by the lake," she added. "Sure you will." She left on a Friday morning. By Friday night, I was gone. I'd booked a storage unit 3 towns over. Every box I wanted to keep, photos, keepsakes, files, my grandfather's tools, was already packed. I didn't take anything that would signal an immediate exit. Just the essentials. The things I'd want in a life that no longer had her in it. I left a single envelope on the kitchen table. Inside it, one printed screenshot. The one where she called me, a placeholder with a punchline package. And below it, a single sticky note. "Thank you for the freedom." I didn't leave a forwarding address. No explanation. No text. Just absence. By the time she came back on Sunday, the keys would be gone from the hook. The drawers would be half empty. And I'd be nothing more than an unanswered question echoing in her hollow little castle of lies. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. That would come later, when she realized who I'd become without her. She came back on a Sunday afternoon, dragging her designer suitcase behind her, phone pressed to her ear, laughing at something or someone. Her voice floated through the doorway like she still owned the air inside the house. But the house didn't feel the same. There was no coffee brewing, no laundry in the machine, no sound of a TV humming in the background, no one on the couch, just the soft echo of her own footsteps on hardwood. And then she saw it. The envelope on the kitchen table. She probably thought it was a note, or some flowers, or maybe even some awkward attempt at romance. She wasn't expecting the screenshot. She definitely wasn't expecting my absence. I wasn't there to see her face. But I imagine the silence finally got loud. The kind of loud that no phone call, no group chat, no Brent could fill. She called me. 12 times. I watched each one ring out, face down on the hotel nightstand where I was staying. I had a view of the skyline. Room service. Quiet. Peace. Eventually, she texted. The tone shifted quickly, from confusion to panic. "Where are you? Are you okay? Is this some kind of joke? Come home. Let's talk." I didn't respond. She wasn't entitled to my words anymore. And it turns out, silence is the one language she never learned how to speak. That week, she tried everything. First, the concerned wife bit. Voicemails with that carefully rehearsed tremble in her voice. Then came the guilt, the indignation. "You're acting like a child. Running away? Really?" I didn't answer. She started reaching out to friends. I know this because one of them, Kayla, the same one who laughed along at the restaurant, messaged me separately. "Kayla, I just want to say, I didn't know how far she'd taken it. You didn't deserve any of it." I didn't reply to her either. Not because I was angry, because I was done. Meanwhile, I was building something. I moved into a small studio for a few weeks, bare walls, no distractions. I'd always talked about going freelance, building my own business, but never had the time. Now I did. I used the silence. Used the sting of humiliation like a fire under my feet. I built a website. Took on side clients. Started posting my transformation online, not as revenge, just as record. But people noticed. The gym paid off. My face leaned out, jaw sharper. I started smiling again. Real smiles, not the forced ones I used to give while she was on her phone, ignoring me from across the room. I posted a photo, nothing dramatic. Just me at a cafe, laptop open, caption, "Starting over." It went modestly viral. Friends who hadn't seen me in years messaged me. Former coworkers reached out. Then, she messaged again. "I saw your post. You look good." I didn't reply. A week later. "Can we please talk? I miss you." Still nothing. Then came the voice message, shaky, quiet. "Please, just call me." I was stupid. I know that now. I was trying to be funny. Trying to feel powerful, I guess. I didn't think you'd ever leave. I didn't think you had it in you. And that was the truth. She never thought I had it in me. She thought she could strip me down in front of her friends, call me small, joke about my worth, and that I'd just stay there, clinging to her like some lifeline. But here's the thing about humiliation. It either breaks you, or it frees you. It freed me. She showed up once. At the new co-working space I rented a few months in. I was mid-meeting with a client when I saw her through the glass wall, hesitating, unsure, makeup faded, eyes glassy like she hadn't slept in days. I didn't go out to meet her. She stood there for maybe a minute before turning away. That was the last time I saw her in person. I've heard things. Brent ghosted her. Apparently, he was only in it for the thrill, not the fallout. A few of her friends dropped off, too, especially once they realized they weren't laughing with her. They were laughing at someone else's expense. Some even messaged me apologies. Some tried to flirt. I ignored them all. Because now, I had everything she said I never would. Peace. Confidence. A name that stood for something beyond being mocked in a wine-soaked circle of mean girls. And she? She had silence. The same silence she once gave me. Only now, it was hers to live with. It's been a year. I don't think about her every day anymore. There was a time when her voice haunted everything. Her laughter in the back of my mind. Those words, small man, small show, like glass shards in the quiet moments. But now? Now I live in peace. I run my own business. I have clients who respect me, a space that's mine, and mornings where I wake up without the weight of feeling not enough. The gym is still part of my life, not out of revenge, but out of rhythm. I built something for myself that had nothing to do with her, and everything to do with who I became the moment I walked away. Sometimes I'll get tagged in an old photo, some mutual friend's birthday, some random memory, and her face will be there. Smiling. Confident. Before everything cracked. I don't delete them anymore. They're just reminders of who I was, of what I survived. The last message she ever sent me came a few months ago. I still think about you. I wish I could undo it all. I read it once, then archived it. No anger, no gloating, just closure. I don't need revenge. She's living in it. But there was another path I could have taken. If I'd confronted her that night at the restaurant, stood up in front of all her friends and laid into her for every word, every jab, every ounce of cruelty, I could have watched her squirm, called her out, let them all see what she really was behind the wine glass and fake lashes. But I didn't. Because if I had, she would have twisted it. She'd have turned me into the villain, the aggressive husband who can't take a joke. She would have cried tears for an audience and painted me as insecure, weak, unstable. And they would have believed her. Because no one ever suspects the pretty one with the sharp tongue. So I stayed silent that night. And in doing so, I gave her nothing to spin. Just the reflection of her own behavior loud and clear. But I've often imagined a different outcome, one where I never checked her phone at all. Where I shrugged off the insult, drank my water, and told myself she was just venting. I would have stayed. I would have believed her when she said she was going on a girl's trip. Kissed her goodbye. Waited at home. Probably cooked dinner the night she returned. And all the while, she'd keep laughing. She'd keep texting Brent from the bathroom. Keep sharing my worst moments in group chats labeled Wifey Squad. Keep tearing down the man who would have handed her the world just to make her smile again. I would have grown smaller. Not in size, but in spirit. Until one day, I'd wake up and not recognize the man in the mirror. And maybe she'd never even leave. Maybe she'd stay, just long enough to keep using me. But that version of me doesn't exist anymore. Because I chose to leave before she finished hollowing me out. And the look on her face when she realized she couldn't get me back? That wasn't satisfaction. That wasn't justice. That was freedom. And it was mine.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.